Welcome back to the ChessGoals YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to read descriptive chess notation. Most of you are familiar with algebraic notation, moves like e4, e5, knight to f3. We're going to talk about descriptive notation, and you can see the moves above my head. On the left-hand side, we have descriptive, and on the right-hand side, we have algebraic. So let's just go through a game, and we'll talk about how to read this notation as we go through it. So the first move that we see is pawn to king 4, so p-k4. And when you're looking at descriptive notation, the easy part of descriptive notation is they always list the piece, so p is a pawn, whereas algebraic, they leave out the p for pawn. So that can be confusing at first when you're learning algebraic. Descriptive, that's a little easier. Now when you see p-k4, the k stands for the king, and the 4 means 4 squares up on the king's file. So pawn to king 4 means you take this pawn and move it up to the square that's called king 4. This is called e4 with algebraic. Now pawn to king 4 for black. You might be wondering, how can black play pawn to king 4 when white just played pawn to king 4? That makes no sense. You have to keep flipping it in your mind, thinking about it from the side whose turn it is to move. So pawn to king 4 for black is actually pawn to e5 with algebraic notation, because it's black's king's 4th square, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is pawn to king 4, pawn to king 4. Now we see knight to kb3. What that means is knight to king's bishop 3. So instead of saying the f file, this is the king's bishop's file. And the third square is right here. So we got 1, 2, 3. Knight to king bishop 3 is knight to f3. Now for black, we have knight to queen bishop 3, which you can kind of figure out. Knight to c6. And now we see bb4. bb4 means bishop to bishop 4. So this is the only bishop that can move, and it can move to this bishop's the c file, that bishop's file, 4 squares up. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of problem solving, right? This is also a bishop 4, but there's no bishop that can go there. So if both bishop 4s are open, then you might have to say bishop to king bishop 4. So now we see bishop to bishop 4 for black. It's the same type of move. It's bishop to c5. That bishop is 4th rank. Now we see pawn to queen knight 4 for white. So look at the queen's knight right here on b1. So that's b4. So now we're looking at the Evans Gambit, it looks like. Bishop takes knight pawn, bxnp. So if there's only one pawn that a black bishop can capture, it'll say bxp. And that's my favorite part of descriptive notation. Sometimes it's just nice to say bishop takes pawn takes pawn, right? pxp. It just makes it easy. So in this case, we have bishop takes the knight pawn, because the bishop could also take this other pawn, but it's not a knight pawn, right? So this lets us know that's the capture. Now we see pawn to bishop 3 for white. This is a bishop 3, and this is a bishop 3, but this one is covered. So the move is c3. I think you guys are starting to realize why players switch to algebraic eventually. It's a little simpler, right? There's kind of some problem solving with descriptive notation. It's not always intuitive. Now we see bishop to rook 4 for black. That's the only rook 4. Pawn to queen 4 for white. Queen 4, king 4, those are always intuitive. There's only one queen, there's only one king. And pawn takes pawn. That's easy. It's the only pawn capture. Castle for white. Castling is the same. 0-0 or O-O, depending on what you like. When I looked this up on Wikipedia, they used O's for descriptive and zeros for algebraic. Now we have pawn to queen 6. Oh, I made a mistake. Okay, so this is normally the 6th rank, right? When we're thinking of algebraic notation, but it's black's move. Pawn to queen 6 would not be this. This would be pawn to queen 3. 1, 2, 3. Pawn to queen 6 is the equivalent of d3 when it's black to play. Now we have queen to knight 3. Let's queen out to b3. And look at this sharp attacking game in the Evans Gambit. Bishop is hitting the pawn on f7. All right, so now the next move is queen to bishop 3. That's queen to f6. Now we have pawn to king 5. Trying to deflect the queen off of the defense of this square. Queen to knight 3. So she sidesteps over to g6. And now we have rook to king 1. Putting the rook on this e file. It's the king's file. So even though the king moved, the e file is still the king's file. So that's why it's still saying rook to king 1. All right, now look at this next one. See if you can figure this out. Kn-K2. We haven't seen one like this before. The nice thing about descriptive notation is it always uses n for knight. You know, some types of notation have used kn before, and that just gets confusing. But n means knight, so kn means king's knight. King's knight goes to king 2, and that's because queen's knight could also go to king 2. So we see knight g to e7, and now we have bishop to rook 3. Here's a rook 3, here's a rook 3. It's got to be this. And pawn to knight 4 for black. It would have to be one of these moves. It's going to be b5. Queen takes pawn. We see that qxp. That's the only pawn the queen can take. And rook to queen knight 1. Hitting the queen. Queen to rook 4. The other rook 4 is over here. The queen cannot get there. And we see bishop to knight 3. Knight 3s are b6 and g6. It's going to be the bishop back this way. Qn to q2. So now you guys should be familiar with this type of notation. What is Qn to q2? It's the queen's knight to queen 2. King's knight also had the chance to go there. That's why we needed the Qn noted. Bishop to knight 2. That's the fianchetto, the knight 2 squares. We see bishop to b7 is the only move that matches bishop to knight 2. Knight to king 4 for white. All right, king 4, we like those. They're always easy. Queen to bishop 4 in reply. One of those two squares. It's got to be queen to f5. Now we see bishop captures qp, queen pawn. That was a little bit tricky. There's two queen pawns. Only one can be captured by a bishop. So it's got to be bishop takes d3. We haven't done a visualization video in a while, but I feel like this is making you guys work as hard as a visualization video. So this is getting your fix of really trying to think hard and process which move are we talking about. And I think it becomes more natural if you use this notation quite a bit. I do not, so it's still not natural for me. But when I very first started playing chess, quite a few players were using descriptive notation. Now we have knight to bishop 6, which is going to be right here. The other bishop 6, knight can't get there. Oh, I skipped a move, sorry. Queen to rook 4 was the move I missed. Okay, queen to rook 4. Now we have knight to bishop 6. Do you see the ch here? That signifies a check. So knight to bishop 6, check. Pawn takes knight. Pawn takes pawn. Rook to knight 1. The other rook is already on a knight 1 square. Queen rook to queen 1. All right. Queen takes knight for black. So this pawn was pinned. That was the only knight on the board. And now black is threatening checkmate. So for white, we have rook takes knight check. Only rook takes knight. Knight takes rook in return. And queen takes pawn check. Wow, look at this tactic. Sacrificing the queen. King takes. And look at that, chess.com just noticed. Brilliant move. King takes queen. And I like this notation. Bishop to bishop 5, double check. So this bishop is moving here, or a bishop would be moving here. Those are both bishop to bishop 5. But because it says double check, DBLCH, that lets us know that it has to be this bishop. So it's bishop to bishop 5 check, double check, excuse me. King to king 1. So that king retreats to its starting square. Now we have bishop to queen 7 check. King to bishop 1. And now the very last move is bishop takes knight EXN with a checkmate. I hope that was clear, guys. This is descriptive notation. I will leave a link in the description to check out the Wikipedia page if you want more information on what descriptive notation is. All right, thanks for watching, and please check out some other videos on the ChessGoals channel. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, if it was helpful, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. Have a good day.